How often should you change the strings on your guitar? So if you get a new guitar, I generally take the view that a guitar is not mine until I've put new strings on it. And mainly for personal preference. If it's a brand new guitar and you take it out of the box, it's fresh from the factory, then it's really a matter of preference. You know that they're the same gauge, you use the same brand. If you're a beginner or a newer player, it doesn't matter quite so much, but you'll know as you get more experience with the instrument that you just have your preference. For me personally, I use Rotosound Yellows, which are the 10 gauge. They're my number one strings. They kind of always have been. Over time, I've tried a few others. I really don't like Ernie Ball. I know they're really, really popular, so those of you watching this, you may love them, but personally, I've always found they lose tone very quickly, and they feel they need replacing very quickly. As strings age and they feel kind of gritty under your fingers, Ernie Balls get there very quickly for me, whereas Rotosounds, they just last a long time. So part of this is just your own sweat and oil, how that reacts to the strings. Not everyone will have the same experience with Ernie Balls and with Rotosounds. That said, I've become a big fan of the D'Addario NYXLs. So if you're not familiar with those, they market themselves as lasting longer and not losing their tone as quickly, meaning you don't have to change them as often. And I did find that to be true. They didn't need replacing all that often. The problem with them is they're more expensive. So the idea is you don't change them as often, so they cost more. But I found actually they didn't really last any longer than my Rotosound. So again, your mileage may vary on that. If you look them up, they get a lot of good reviews. So I think if you are used to a string brand that doesn't last all that long and you try those NYXLs, you probably have a good experience with them. And they claim to not break. Again, since moving to 10s many years ago, I almost never break strings. I used to break the toppy on the 9 gauge fairly often. So if you find yourself breaking a lot of strings, consider the gauge and also just check that you haven't got any sharp bits on the bridge or anything like that. So if it's a brand new guitar and you know it's from the factory and you know it's you took it out of the box yourself, it's brand new, no one else has played it, it's up to you. I have had guitars where I leave the strings on for a little while, but generally speaking, I'll change it first straight away. And it's also just a great opportunity then to condition the fretboard if it's an unfinished. So rosewood, ebony, you can condition them. If you've got a maple, if you buy a guitar from Fender, for example, they'll often, I think always, that'll be a sealed fretboard, so you don't need to do that. But you can condition, oil the board, check the truss rod. You can do that general setup. Again, if you're brand new to it, don't be messing around with truss rods and things like that. But you can take it to someone to do that. You change the strings at the same time. That is a great opportunity. But don't let that. If you take the guitar out of the box and it feels good and it plays good, don't think you can't play it until that's been done. Of course you can, but it's a good opportunity. If it's a second-hand guitar, or it's new but you got it a floor model, you go into guitar shops and you play them, and those strings, they feel gritty. They almost feel like they're starting to rust. Just that there's feedback on those strings, and it's horrible. So definitely the first thing I do if I buy a guitar that anyone else has played apart from the people at the factory, those strings get changed. The guitar gets cleaned, the fretboard gets conditioned, the strings get changed. And like I said, the guitar doesn't feel like my guitar until I've put new strings on it. So that, for a new guitar, that's my personal approach. Of course, not everyone, that is not a golden rule that you have to do it straight away. That's my personal preference. Once they're on there and it's your guitar, then how often do you change after that? I think it's a feedback thing. and it also depends what you're doing things. So I think on an acoustic it's much more sensitive because it really does make a very drastic impact on tone on an acoustic guitar. Just, you know, brand new strings, they have their own liveliness, that they just kind of start to go a bit more dull over time. Now some people love that sound, okay, so if you love the sound of old strings or you love the feeling of old strings, then yeah, by all means keep them on. Again, this isn't a golden rule, but I do find on acoustic I'm more in tune to these strings need changing, I better change them. And then every time I do, it feels like the guitar's got a new lease of life. So it's great. Wow. With an acoustic guitar, with an electric guitar, I'd say it's probably more of a feel thing. They do still, of course, have an impact on the sound, that kind of liveliness. But depending on your signal chain, you know, that may or may not come through very apparently through the amp. If you've got, you know, tons of gain, different effects going on, the properties of the string are going to be pretty, yeah, they're not going to be the number one thing that people hear. So for me, that's more of a tactile thing. Is it pleasant to play? Do I feel comfortable playing them? Do they feel nice under my hand? And then do I feel like it's coming through the speakers? So even if the audience may not know, you as a player know, you know, whether your tone's hitting as it should or not. So I don't believe in this rule that it should be done every X amount of time. Okay, some people say they change their strings every month, every 6 months, whatever, and that's probably just because they know that that's how long they last for them. You know, if you know that you play every day for an hour and you get this much life out of the strings, then yeah, great. That might mean you have to change them every 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. But for someone else who plays half an hour a day, or the guitar stays in the case so it's not exposed to as much air and dust, or you rotate through guitars, so you play an hour a day or 2 hours a day, but you've got 10 guitars and you rotate through them, then you're not going to get through them as quickly. So if ever you've heard that strings last for a specific amount of time, and that period of time is the same for everyone, don't listen to that, because it's just not true. Guitar strings certainly have a lifespan, and you will get to, you know, you'll develop your own taste and preference for when that lifespan is up, and it's going to be how it sounds, how it feels. It's not going to be because the calendar's reached the right day. In fact, I played a guitar last month that hadn't had a string change in 13 years, and it wasn't the nicest thing to play, but it was playable. It sounded fine. You know, the notes sounded correct. If I played a D chord, it sounded like a D chord. Yes, I would have liked to change the strings. It would have sounded better. It certainly would have played better, but the guitar was workable. You know, it sounded as a guitar should sound. So as long as it's comfortable, and you're happy with it, then that's really all that matters. You know, the one caveat to that is, like I said, it does, especially on an acoustic, particularly on acoustic, it does change the sound. So if someone says to you, you should change the strings on that, it would sound different, sound better, then, you know, they might well be right, but it can also be right that that's not the sound or feel that you prefer. So it doesn't mean you should run out and change those strings straight away because someone else said it will sound better. So that's really it. If it's a new guitar, it's a great opportunity to change the strings, to condition the board, do the setup, get your action set up and your truss rod set up, and make sure that the bridge height and everything is all on point. You know, full setup on a new guitar, take the opportunity to change the strings. If it's a guitar that is either new but has been played, that was on the wall in the shop, or is secondhand, I would always change the strings as soon as I get it home. Change the strings, same thing, give it a setup, and then from that point on, just whenever you feel like it's necessary, and don't let anyone else tell you that you need to change it at specific intervals of time. Hope it helps.